right, it's 6 o'clock and we're going to get started because I absolutely value your time and I appreciate everybody coming tonight. I'm hopeful that as we continue to do these in-person two-way conversations, and my commitment is to doing one every single month of the school year, to do them based on feedback that comes from you about what it is that you need to better communicate. And obviously I've got some communication work ahead of me if we're having a hard time getting a crowd out tonight, but undaunted. I know our parents are invested in their students' education, and we're committed to continuing a dialogue, to building activities and experiences that get families, parents in particular, comfortable coming together to talk about what's working and not working in our school. We are messaging to our students every day, especially early as they transition to the high school in 9th grade, that we want them to have a growth mindset, that we want them to know that they're capable of learning, of growing, and that we want to get better every single day. So we feel the same way. It's really important as a faculty and staff administration that we model that as well. So I just wanted to kind of celebrate a couple things that recently came out. The first was that in getting all of our state testing data in math, literacy, and science, we're ranked top 3, one in a couple of places. Really not just in here at the high school, but across all grade levels in the greater region. So that includes all different size schools in our greater ESD, North Central Washington. And I'm really excited about that. I think there are so many challenges for all of our students over the course of the last couple of years. And I know that our faculty and students really renewed their commitment, set some goals towards achieving at the highest levels. And state testing is difficult. We have to stop what we're doing. We often have to kind of rearrange our schedules. I think there's a level of stamina that's been challenging for students coming out of the pandemic in the last few years. But I'm very excited about the commitment that our faculty and staff made to getting kids to do their very best work, because that's really step number 1 in any kind of major assessment. If we can get kids to do their very best, then we can get data on what's working and not working in our instruction and our supports, and figure out how to support those kids so that they can achieve at the highest level. So very excited about that. I think the next one, 80+% of our students are involved in extracurricular activities. That was a commitment that's longstanding, precedes me by any means. But this year in particular, especially with our incoming class, we really challenge them to test drive any of our extracurricular activities. Could be clubs, organizations, music, chorus, drama, of course, our sports programs. And we know that if students are actively involved in our school community outside of the classroom, that they feel like they belong. I know that our drama program, our music program, our choir program, all of our sports, our clubs and organizations are little families. And if you were here during the lunchtime as our school year evolves, you'll see that probably right now, I would say, and obviously all freshmen have to eat lunch here in the cafeteria. And right now I'd say we've probably got about somewhere around 90% of our freshmen who eat right here where you guys are right now. As the school years evolve and they start building relationships through our extracurriculars and through their classes, we see this pattern year after year. And I definitely saw it in my first year last year. The number of students who are in the cafeteria eating lunch diminishes, and they start eating lunch in small pods related to clubs, organizations that are meeting with the advisors of those clubs at lunchtime, or because they found a place, whether it's with Mrs. Swanson or Mr. Simmons or Visca Meinhardt or Ms. Carlson, people who create a sense of place on a small scale that mimics the sense of place that we're trying to create as a faculty and staff on a large scale too. So excited about student body involvement in extracurriculars. We're setting a goal as a whole school community of 95% attendance rate. Right now we're at 85. We can say the fair, some extracurricular activities that pull kids out of school have something to do with that number. But I want to advocate to parents that we're trying to incentivize at the grade level that our students be here in school. We're better together when students are in the building and there's continuity to their learning experience. We know that they're going to perform at a higher level. Obviously, there's all kinds of circumstances beyond our control related to attendance, but that's a commitment we're trying to incentivize with our students this year. So before we get into our school improvement plan, I think this really is relevant to our school improvement plan. I just want to message to all families I'll just call it recommitment to safety this year. Obviously, there's been some circumstances in schools in our nation that have challenged us and elevated in our minds how important it is to think about the details related to safety. Historically, we're kind of an open campus. We have a lot of activities that take place across the street, whether it's tennis or using the fields, the baseball field as well. Our shops are on the back side here, and they're kind of open. You can drive into our parking lot. You could probably access those in some way. And we've said to our students in particular that we don't have any problem with you exiting from any of the various doors that we have in the building, but when you come back in, you have to come back in through the main office. And we're recommitting with any of our providers as well. Even our own maintenance staff will come and check in, let us know even though they're badged and easily identifiable, they're people that we know. And we are a small school, so anytime we do see somebody that we don't know, we've messaged to our students that, hey, if you see someone who looks like they don't belong here, if only because we don't see any identification, or if somebody doesn't know them, then it's worth it to just mention it to adult. Usually it's something that's resolvable. But so we've worked on our single entry in the office. We've got our system in place right now where if anybody's coming into the school to volunteer, they're vetted. Everybody has to be badged, and we've kind of made a recommitment as a faculty to wear badges visibly. That's as much for identification internally as it is for if there's any kind of emergency services that come in externally in case of an emergency, and they need to know who the faculty and staff are. Exterior doors, there's a tendency to kind of prop things open. Hey, I'm just going to walk out to my car. Obviously, that was kind of a source of a lot of really bad things that happened in some schools. So we've recommitted to that. Our HVAC system during the pandemic was one that was circulating at such a high level, creating 4 cycles of air cleaning, that it would actually keep our doors open if we closed them. So they automatically close, but the air pressure would keep them open. So we recalibrated our HVAC system to allow doors to close, worked with some of the levers as well, and made it clear to students that they're not to prop doors open for their peers either, just to kind of, again, channel anybody who's coming into the building through our main entrance, which is vetted and also secured. Just so that we know where our students are, which is a big part of our safety, we've re-implemented a lot of much more rigorous sign in and sign out protocols. So students have to sign in and sign out every time they're coming or going from a classroom during instructional time. And they also have to leave their phones in a little location next to the door when they go. And it's amazing how that's really changed the dynamics of leaving classrooms for students. So little things that are a product of discussions that we had about faculty, about things that we can do to improve that. Again, maybe it's not just a safety issue, but it's something that's translated into higher levels of continuous learning for students as well. And I think that's important, not only coming out of the pandemic, but at the beginning of the school year. We all, adults and students alike, have to work on our academic stamina, for lack of a better term. And I think it takes time, and we've got perspective and grace on that for our students. And at the same time, we're going to challenge them to increase their ability to stay focused, attended, engaged, and hopefully that we're creating activities and assignments that are engaging to sustain, and giving them breaks when they need them too. We're committing to emergency drills. We're in constant coordination with Much, our SRO, with emergency services in the area, and they're going to be drilling in the buildings. They've already started at the Vale, just so that they can assess accessing the buildings in ways that we can best support them in case of any type of emergency. And as a district, we've made a commitment to purchasing 2-way radios, not just for administration, but for our central office staff, and also for people who work on the perimeters of the schools, so that we can have communication, especially PE. Mr. Brown and I usually communicate with our PE staff via our cell phones. I just don't think that's the most expedited way to communicate, especially in the case of an emergency. So that is on the way as well. Any questions about safety? So this is a slide deck that we're going to put on the web page, so you can get into the details not only of our school improvement plan, but also of the district strategic plan. One of the things that I'm really grateful for in my first year in the district is we took a lot of time as a district administration thinking about who we were and what we valued and what we wanted for students, and collaborated across grade levels to define our vision for schools and what we wanted in students in terms of their learning experiences and what we wanted in a high school graduate. And that is something that's available to you. I'm going to give you a condensed version of the district strategic plan, and then I'm going to talk about the ways that we're implementing that plan at the building level. So the strategic plan is broken into 3 areas: rigorous research-based instruction. There's the commitment there. Effective instruction will be present in every classroom every day. Student engagement, belonging, and well-being. We're going to promote social development and personal well-being that supports engagement and belonging for every student. It's really been a mantra during my entire experience, and I'm grateful to our superintendent, Mr. Johnson, because I think he messages that almost every time he's talking to any members of our school community, that belonging is fundamental. And finally, parent and community engagement, that we're working just like tonight to try to build partnerships and relationships so that if there's something that's not working in our schools that you feel that you can take a step towards, Mr. Brown or myself, communicate directly with teachers, help support your students in helping them self-advocate, because that's something that we want for all of them as they move through their school years here, and think about how we can take best advantage of the network of community partnerships that we have. So those are our district strategic plans, and I'm just going to take a look at each one of them specific to Kashmere High School, our school community. So rigorous research-based instruction, we're going to develop calibrated policy, departmental consistencies, and validation protocols for all of our assessments. So this is almost like backwards design. We're going to say, what have we done historically in our assessments? Let's make sure that they're really clearly tied to the power standards in the units of study and the courses that we're teaching. And then let's make sure that our instruction is aligned to lead students very clearly to show their proficiency or mastery in those assessments. In addition to that, last year, especially coming out of the pandemic, we had some students who were credit deficient. We had some students who struggled in their transition to high school and did not receive credit in a number of classes. And so we started thinking, okay, how can we make sure that students in our school community are trained to the expectations and to strategies and habits of mind that translate into them being academically successful. So a group of us, including Mr. Brown, myself, I'm actually co-teaching a study strategies class with him this year during the first part of block 4. We've got 5 other teachers that are teaching those classes as well. And they involve a mini lesson 2 or 3 times a week on an organizational strategy, on a study strategy, on how to engage an adult in a difficult conversation when there's disconnect, how to be an effective collaborator in the classroom, anything that we can think of, how to take best advantage of your class time. So we're constantly in communication with these students about offering them a variety of strategies. The students themselves are helping to curate that by bringing strategies at some of their assignments. They go on YouTube or go and look up resources and bring them in. As it relates to organization, for example, there's some students who have already decided, we've given them paper calendars or paper strategy, or organizers. And we've also offered them digital organizers like Google Keep, ways that they can actually kind of document and create reminders for themselves. Outlook calendars or Google calendars as well. And what we want for students is because they test drive these various strategies or structures, think about what's going to work best for them and implement them. So it's been powerful that they feel like they've got a little bit of voice in what we're doing. Our hope is that if we've trained students to some of these fundamentals of being successful academically, then we can start to assume certain things. And my goal would be that all of our students walking in the door are taking a study strategies class, because that's going to be a foundation on which we can build and create higher expectations and help them achieve at higher levels. So that's a work in progress. We're kind of building that plane while we fly it. But again, we're doing that with our students. And when they feel like they're collaborators in something, because they know it's about 130 students who are involved in these classes in our building, which is almost 20% of our population, they know that they're having input on and getting an opportunity to think and collaborate on what's going to help them be successful here. So that's got some power. Finally, we're going to support alignment of instructional practice and student outcomes through professional development across disciplines. So we have a district-wide team called Leading for Teacher Learning. And the goal is to elevate quality best practices in all of our classrooms and create opportunities for our teachers to get into classrooms across disciplines, not necessarily within the same discipline they teach, and see best practices and think about how they can take those best practices into their classrooms. We're a very small school, so if we can calibrate how it is that we approach teaching and learning, expectations that we have for students in the classroom, how we norm our classrooms out, if we leverage some things that we've worked on already in school, we think we can increase the outcomes for our students. We can have higher expectations combined with quality support. Students will achieve at higher levels. Our goal obviously is to have them ready for wherever that next big challenge is. We want our students to graduate with choices, whether that means going directly to work, going to a trade school, going to the military, going to a 2 or a 4-year college. We want them to have the wherewithal, the developed skills, the references in our community because they've been active in our community through internships or independent study or work experiences that translate into their readiness to be successful after high school. The second area is student engagement, belonging, and well-being. We developed a Kashmir School District health and wellness policy last year with the input from parents, students, administrators, teachers from PE and from our health programs across all the grade levels in school, and we're implementing that. And that involves encouraging physical activity, making good decisions about what it is that you eat, the quality of sleep that you get, making good decisions about what you put into your body, and understanding the social nature of health and wellness as well. And we're encouraged by our faculty's commitment, and if you looked at our enrollment in classes like PE and weights, we have a high interest in this community and being healthy, and that's encouraging for us too, because we know if students have their own personal commitment to health and well-being, that it translates into them being that much more engaged in their learning. We're going to promote high levels of freshman engagement and extracurricular activities through peer mentor programs. So if you are the parent of a freshman, your freshman is one of probably 5 to 7 students that's paired with 1 or 2 peer mentors. And those are juniors or seniors who have represented themselves as leaders in some way, shape, or form and have embraced the commitment of helping our youngest Bulldogs transition to the Bulldog way, what our expectations are for being a successful member of this community. They met with their pods of freshmen in the spring of last year over at the middle school, walked them over. We did some small group work. They walked around to kind of acculturate themselves to the school community a little bit. And then they were instrumental in our freshman orientation at the end of August, where we helped students kind of acclimate, take a little bit of the electricity out of their heads as they started their first day of school the next day. They meet with freshmen during our 20-minute advisory period on Wednesdays with their freshman advisory. So if there's probably usually going to be somewhere around 4 or 5 peer mentors that sit in freshman advisory and just help kids goal set, help kids think about what they need to do next, represent how to be engaged in our school in different ways, encourage them to get involved in extracurricular activities, really supporting that sense of belonging. We're going to continue to identify, define, and refine explicit social emotional learning standards, delivery grounded in the Bulldog way. So if you've seen, there's one in the far back here, and I can reference it right here as well. This is 7 habits of mind that we developed or identified as a faculty in my very first professional development experience with the faculty at the beginning of last year, as these are essential to being successful members of our school community. And so we went through a workshop where we looked at about 16 or 18 different habits of mind, and our faculty narrowed it down to these few. And then I just documented that information. We did the exact same thing through advisory with all of our high school students over the course of the first quarter of the school year last year. And amazingly, with maybe one exception, they identified the same habits of mind that they thought were essential to being successful members of our community. Being an empathetic listener, not just being there, but being attending to what someone's saying and thinking about the context within which they're saying it, whether you're in an academic situation or any situation. Being respectful communicators, how it is that we interact with each other, the language that we use in formal and informal situations is really critical to defining who we are. being risk takers, not being afraid to fail forward, being problem solvers, working hard, fighting through frustrations, showing grit and determination in the face of obstacles or challenges, having a growth mindset, understanding that we're all capable of learning, that we're three-dimensional as people, and that we can continue to evolve, that we're all lifelong learners. And the one that is probably dearest to my heart, because I would argue that I've never worked a day in my life, some people might say the same thing, is to make work play. If you have an attitude that says, I enjoy what I'm doing, it's not work, right? And our goal for all of our students is to find that passion in their career so that they never feel like they've worked a day in their lives, right? Because it's just so passionate for them. So like I said, the Bulldog Way has great potential to be a lever. I can tell you one thing that's going to happen in probably about 4 weeks, once we've really helped all of our students, especially our new students, understand what the Bulldog Way is, these various elements. We're going to give them the chance to self-assess. They're going to say in each one of their classes, hey, who am I? Am I meeting or not quite meeting, or is this an area of growth? Being an empathetic listener in my science class, in my math class, in my social studies class, in my literacy class. Do I show grit and determination? They're going to self-assess in all of these. Am I meeting, or do I need some work in this area? The teachers are going to do exactly the same thing with each one of their students. And we're going to have little 5-minute conferences where they share their perspectives on it. To me, those could be the most powerful conversations that we have in the classroom, especially if there's a disconnect, if there's a misperception on the part of a student or on the part of a teacher about how it is that they perceive themselves or how that the student is perceived in the class. What comes out of that conversation is an opportunity for growth, that our teachers can say to students, hey, if you've got room for growth in this area, I can tell you what that means or how you can show growth in my specific classroom. And so again, it's a lever towards the highest level of engagement. Finally, we're developing an 8 through 10 transitional school counseling plan. We're actually creating a transitional comprehensive school counseling plan for the entire district. And I'm actually leading that work with all of our school counselors and support personnel. But this year, Tara Semenko is, I don't know why I do that every time, but Tara Semenko is our new school counselor. She works 20% of her time over at the middle school and 80% of her time here at the high school. As she goes through her school year experience, she's going to start shifting the amount of time that she spends at the high school and adding more to the middle school to start getting to know those 8th graders and help them understand what it means to transition to 9th and eventually to 10th grade. She ends up transitioning those students off to Miss Fall, who's been with us for a long time and is going to be focused exclusively on everything related to 11th and 12th graders. So we're excited about the opportunities there. We've got teachers who also transition between the middle and the high school instructionally. We've got so many of our faculty members who coach or participate as advisors in extracurricular activities at the middle school, and the relationships and accountability that come from those investments translate into higher levels of engagement in our school community. So we absolutely value those. Last element is parent and community engagement. Obviously, we're here because we're committed to trying to create opportunities to connect as a faculty, administration, and as parents. Improve communication and access to instructional materials and opportunities to support and resources. We're trying to develop shared expectations for teacher communication with parents regarding student academic performance. I'll just give you some really straightforward examples. Sometimes if there's disconnect or something's not working for your student in the classroom, a teacher or even an administrator will send you an email. If an email dialogue goes back and forth and we don't feel like we're really on the same page, my resolution, and I can understand it pretty quickly, and I think we're committing to doing that as a faculty and staff, is to pick up the phone. Every time you move from email to picking up the phone, there's less disconnect. The next level of disconnect is what we're doing right now. Let's talk face to face and see if we can resolve whatever this is. I think we become increasingly empathetic as listeners and respectful as communicators the closer we get to one another. So my commitment to you is that I'm emphasizing to my faculty and staff that if email communication doesn't look like it's getting the working, then let's pick up the phone and talk about how we can come together and support engaging your student in the highest levels of learning. If that doesn't work, let's get together and have a meeting and see how we can support that. Not just a meeting to talk, but a meeting to set goals and a commitment to check in on those goals and to celebrate them when they're achieved. So, We already published our teacher availability for academic support. You can find that on the website. It allows you to just look at the days of the week and the hours when teachers are available for support. So if your student's struggling in multiple classes, you can kind of piece together, okay, here's maybe what your week in support looks like. Starting on Monday, Karen Blomquist and Brian James, two of our teachers, have committed to sharing our after-school academic support time. That means that we've got an hour in the library after school for students to get work done. And that could translate into a mandated support. And what that means is a teacher is going to say, no, I'm not suggesting that you go to academic support after school. I'm telling you that you're going to academic support after school. We'll call you and let you know. We're not going to schedule it the same day. We'll give you notice so that you can make arrangements if you need to. The student will be there until they get their work done, and then they don't have to do it anymore. And again, even in my own study strategies class today, I said to the students, I was like, listen, I said, we're here for one reason, and that is to take a little bit of pressure off of your after school time. It's tough to be engaged in school for 6-7 hours a day, right? Take advantage of this half hour, 40 minutes that we have together. Set yourself free after that. It's about how you take advantage of your time, how organized you are, focus your energy. If you can't do that, what happens is we'll set up some support for you after school, and maybe losing that hour after school translate into you being more focused about the time that you spend in school. Improve communication with underrepresented families. And maybe I'll show you a little bit of data. It's kind of hard to see, but I'll just talk to you about it. We had our educational effectiveness survey that we delivered to families last spring. I think about 69 families, well, a total of 82 families, I think it was, completed the survey. And I think there's probably 360 to 400 of you in the school community. And only, I'm going to say it was only 9, I think the math is right, of our Hispanic families responded to the survey. So that's on me, first of all. And maybe I did not communicate effectively enough or thought about the ways that I could get that information out. But our Hispanic families are 40% of our school population. So I want, when we get feedback on how it is that we're doing, whether we're communicating and getting feedback from students or from parents, I'd like it to be as representative as possible. So our recommitment, Mr. Brown, myself, our school community, is to think about ways that we can get that feedback so that we know that either A, we're doing a good job, or where it is that we need to give our attention to do better, not only for you, but for your students. We're trying to translate all our documents. I'm going to try to increase my verbal messaging, using the phone as a way of recording messages and sending things out just to kind of keep things fresh. And then provide monthly opportunities to connect with families, both in English and in Spanish. Maybe we don't have to have separate meetings eventually, but we do have monolingual families that would probably take a step towards if I'm speaking to them in Spanish, and I'm bilingual. So I value the opportunity to practice my language skills, and there's a ton of vocabulary in tonight's presentation that I don't know, and I'm just going to wing it. And I hope there's a little grace for that in about a half an hour. But I think that idea of doing something monthly, and we're hoping to get feedback, and I'm going to put an electronic form. You can see on your tables, there's something that just says like, hey, you know, what's working in terms of communication for you? What's the way that you best access communication? And I'll give you some time to fill that out in a second. But the goal is that if there's a way that works best for you as families, of course, that's the way that we want to communicate. Or if there's an issue related to frequency in how we communicate, or if it's a particular topic that you don't feel like you get information about, and you elevate that in our minds, we can adapt, we can grow. We have a growth mindset to improve, because in the end, this is a consumer business. Our students are consumers, you as families are consumers, and the goal is to meet the needs of our consumers. It's that simple in so many ways. So if you take a look on the screen, these are just questions that we have on how we can improve communication. And really communication, besides talking about our school improvement plan and what we've done safety-wise, was the big focus in tonight's meeting. Our next meeting is going to be on the school conference nights. And what we've committed to doing as a faculty is on Halloween night, when nothing academic is going to happen after about 4:30, we're going to have conferences at parent request, and for our students who may be struggling academically or engaging in school on that first day. And we're going to keep regular school hours to house those conferences. On November 1st, on Tuesday, what we're going to do is we're going to operate our conferences from 12 to 5. We're going to take a 1-hour break, and then we're going to do a 2-hour open house. And that open house is going to be preluded in a presentation where I'm going to talk to you about the various academic, social, behavioral supports that we have available, not only in the school, but also through our network of community partners, and hoping that we get a good parent turnout, not only because they're going to be on their way to open house, but also so that we can kind of help everybody understand how to access those supports. Now I'll be joined by not only Mr. Brown, but our school counselors. We've got a student assistance professional who works with us, Carly Kingry. She's new to us, works for the ESD, but she's done a great job of building relationships with students so far. And she ends up being kind of a frontline support for kids who are dysregulated for some reason or another. They feel like they can step towards her and say, hey, this is not working for me today, or I'm feeling this way. And she helps to kind of understand where they need to go next, whether it's to me, to Mr. Brown, to one of our school counselors, or maybe it's just that kids needed to vent a little bit so that they can kind of disconnect for a second and re-engage in school. So we really value her support as well. And we've got a student assistance team that looks at students at grade level regularly towards thinking about how it is we can support them. And obviously those supports involve connecting with parents as well. So the questions: what communication resource do you most rely on for information? We've got a monthly newsletter. Do you access the daily bulletin through the website? Is there a better way that we could communicate the bulletin to you? Do you rely more on social media for getting information? Is that something that we could enhance? What information about our school would you like to be more accessible, or would you like to learn more about? Rate your confidence and understanding on how to access information about your students' grades on Skyward. Either 1, I don't access because I don't know how to do that at all, or 5, I can access when I need it. And then what suggestions do you have for how we can help you feel better informed? I think it's the word I've got there. I can't really see it. Connected, sorry, to your student school experience. So if you want to talk as a group about that, I'm happy to listen. If you want to write some things down we've got a solid 28 minutes of time, and we don't need all this time. If you just want to have a conversation with me about it, I'm glad to do that as well. Oh, last thing I'm going to reference for you, and thank you for that, Mr. Brown, is on Wednesday of next week. And I think I didn't put information here about that. Shame on me. Wednesday of next week at the Vale has a PTO meeting, and Nick Wood, one of our school board members, has organized what he calls the watchdogs. I don't know if anybody was ever a part of that, if they had students who had an experience at the Vale, but essentially they were dads who went into the Vale and connected with kids, not just their own kids, and try to be a presence as a way of saying, like, hey, maybe students need a mentor or a pat on the back or encouragement in some sort of way. And this is not a gender exclusive experience. It could be women or men who want to be invested in the Watch Bulldogs, which he has proposed for the middle school and the high school. At the high school, it would be being around in the hallways during passing periods. A lot of the places we need support as it relates to safety and good decision making relate to how close our parking lot is to our school and the fact that we have 10-minute passing periods. So being a presence in the parking lot to encourage good decision making, for lack of a better term, during the passing periods and before and after school, it makes a difference. You know, I know Mr. Brown knows that when we're a presence with students, whether it's in the parking lot or in the classrooms or in the hallways, it changes behavior in different ways. And we want to take advantage of that leverage. We know that if there's parents who are invested in supporting students, and we know that there's some kids in our community that need adult mentors too, whether it be men or women. So if you're interested in that, there's a sign-up sheet at the little round table where Mr. Brown is at the end of the night. We'd love to have you come. At 6:45 at the Vale is when they're going to do the meeting specifically related to the Watch Bulldogs. I know there's pizza involved as well. So. Absolutely. Yeah. And I will set something up electronically where if people want to communicate with me, they're interested in being a part of the Watch Bulldogs here at the high school, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. So again, back to our questions. If we want to go through them one at a time and see if you have questions or have any feedback, we can do it that way. We're kind of a small group, so I think it's doable. What do you think? All right. What communication resource do you most rely on for information about school? indirect communication. I get that.
Social media and email.
Yeah. So when we send out the class tag messages about something, that's something that people feel like, yeah.
Just so it doesn't sound weird, but you guys might be curious. Mr. Skensi is recording this. He's going to probably re-answer the question, and so it's like, yeah, that's what I said. But no, he's actually trying to get it on the mic.
I'm not going to repeat what Mr. Brown just said, though.
Since you brought up class thing, that's one of my points here that I've been writing down that I'd like to discuss. I don't need an email telling me to look at a link in class thing to get further information. Just please put it in an email. That would be great. I'm busy. I don't need the time to sign it. Class thing. I don't need the time to sign it. Skyward. You guys that can streamline the communication process.
Okay. All right.
My feeling is actually that you would be consistent in your communication for broadcast modality, all announcements across all platforms, keep things that are passive. So if you did that, it would allow everybody to see everything. When I see the bulletin online, this meeting is on Facebook, the office expressing to my husband, son, we don't use Facebook. And somebody apologizes to the student saying, we learned something today.
So
All announcements, all platforms, solve that.
So I'm just going to repeat what you said. So syncing our platform so that if we sent one message out in one of those mediums, it went out in all of those at the same time.
That
Yeah.
way, no matter what technology is available to a household, what modality they prefer to use that technology, it is available to them.
And so I just want to get back to class tag for a second. So in order for you to open up a message that I send to you on class tag, you have to log into class tag in order to open that message.
I don't log into class thing. The formatting's poor on my phone, and I got nothing.
Okay. That's good feedback, because it's probably the number one way when I do what I would call heavy messaging, and I try to reserve class tag for when we've got something really important so that it doesn't become like diluted. I know in other grade levels, it's used almost as a classroom-based messaging system. Our teachers are not really using that, but if we can find a platform that makes it more accessible, even if it's that we had a listserv of every email that our parents have and said, I'm going to create this listserv, you can join it whenever you want to, and it's going to come out as a straight email so the information is available to you that way. That's something we can look into. Anything?
Otherwise, I like class tag because all the schools use it, and so it's one way to communicate. Because I have kids in multiple schools.
Right.
Yeah, I like it, and it does go to my email, but I also have the alert set on class tag to let me know when something is talked about. So I like class tag.
Yeah, I think maybe one of my understandings is I haven't really seen what class tag looks like from a consumer point of view. I only see it from my messaging point of view. I get those same messages, but they just pop right up for me. So I'm just trying to figure out how I can eliminate. It sounds like what you were referencing were like layers that make it challenging to access it in some way, shape, or
For
form.
instance, the meeting on Monday night for the seniors.
Yeah.
It's a title that says senior meeting. That's sort of a broad headline of what we discussed. To get further detail, to know that there's something going on right there.
Yeah, I don't want to go somewhere else and get further detail. I want one concise spot.
Okay. All right. Again,
That's me.
this is feedback that's going to inform how we approach, and we have to make decisions every single year about the platforms that we decide to use or don't use too. So anything else about, go ahead.
You mentioned a bulletin or letter. Do you go to the website to see that?
You can see the bulletin on the website daily. Yeah.
I love to see an email come. I know some people don't want. I think over communication is better than under communication.
I don't disagree.
To get an email that says, "Oh, there's a newsletter," because I don't often go to the website unless I'm looking for something.
Okay.
And it's particularly hard to get here. He's having trouble hearing the announcements because
No.
Truth is right, regardless, students are not getting the information. And we're missing vital information that then takes away critical opportunity.
Absolutely. So,
That is not.
yep.
Why would be something again that's broadcast and all platforms, all the safety information is critical. That's how we pull that.
So what we were talking about not only is the parent communication, but with the bulletin in particular, where we're really forecasting the week and things that are happening on that specific day, thinking about the ways that we can communicate in various mediums, that information as well, because of the challenges for individuals and groups of students to either A, pay attention to what the announcements say, or B, to hear them over other students who aren't as invested in the announcements on any given day. I appreciate that.
So do the kids probably don't get the messages the parents get.
When I send out an all message, I'm under the assumption that it goes to students and parents as well. Like when I send out a class tag message, I believe students get that message as well, because
It depends on if you
it
click-
depends. Yeah, I click all community members, and that's usually what I use. And again, that's my strategy to ensure that if the parent didn't happen to open it, but the student did. And I think, to your point, students have to be trained to open their emails or vet their emails as well. So that's some work that we have ahead of us. But that would kind of minimize the chances that information was lost. We're going to go here and then we're going to hear.
Just a little feedback, student wise, I did ask my daughter about that. We were going, but her responsibilities.
Mhm.
And she did say that in the morning when they do the announcements, I guess they're supposed to read through it as the intercom is reading it.
Oh,
And so I don't know if it's a particular classroom that's requiring that, or whether it's just your classroom that, they.
has that expectation.
So if the teachers have that as an expectation, that probably.
So that piece of feedback, which I love, is about a particular classroom where the expectation that the teacher has during announcements is that those announcements are read by the students online, because they're accessible that way, while they're being heard. And that was something that I can definitely take back to the faculty as a way that we can ensure clear communication from the student level. We got, like you said, some work to do on making ways that we can make sure that parents get that same immediate communication. Do you have another question?
Sign up for these communications.
I would almost rather people had to opt out than opt in. It's probably easy for us to capture all of the information in terms of electronic signatures, phones, for example, if we were going to try to do something with communication that was text message based or things like that. But everything's on the table, really. My frustration administratively is if we're taking the time to create messages and we're not making it as accessible to you as possible, then we're really just getting in our own way. So. Yeah, it might be a question, and I guess I have to check and see. It might be it's not a question of whether it's that you recognize that platform. It's whether or not you got an email that had information that came from, not from class tag as much as it came from me. Okay, fair enough. Nice. Yep.
One thing that I've always had trouble with, and like the whole time I've been in this, and I don't know if this is just normal for everybody, but it's getting the information early enough. I'll have stuff, something planned, and then they'll be, oh, there's this senior meeting, oh, there's this, all of a sudden, and I didn't know that.
Right.
I heard about this was browsing your website and I was looking up in the counselor area and I was looking at and saw that there was, I don't think I got my, personal email or anything, which I do get a lot of information from Surprise. So I didn't get the senior meeting on Monday evening until I was looking up stuff for my daughter for college on the counseling site. That's what I found.
Okay, no, fair enough.
So,
And there's that did go out in class tag as well, but that doesn't mean that that's the only platform that we need to communicate that. One thing I will say too is that we created this past spring and have kind of finalized, and we've done this for ourselves as well. My request of the faculty at the end of last year is like, let's sit down as a group. If you've got an invested date that you want something locked in for, I want it on our master calendar. So we have a master calendar right now. And probably what we have to do is vet that calendar out and figure out what parents really need in terms of information related to that and what's information that's kind of internal information specific to our school. But having that mapped out as much as possible, obviously, I think sometimes even it related to the meeting on Monday night with seniors. I think that's one of those things. I honestly think that meeting just kind of came up about 2 weeks ago that they actually found the date for it too. So is that correct, Angie? Yeah. That's really good feedback. And I honestly think the more the merrier, seriously. And I think what we're going to have to do is because we're a small group here, is try to elicit as much feedback as possible from everyone to kind of figure out what the happy medium is. But I think one of the things we've heard is that daily and weekly bulletin is something that we want to get out as efficiently as possible. If it means via an email listserv, we can get tech working on creating a listserv and making sure each one of our parents, or at least one of your emails, is connected, if not both of them. I don't see why we wouldn't put them all on there and test drive that. So
Is there a way to possibly have a district-wide calendar? I mean, we're parents of multiple kids, and what we found last year is a lot of the stuff in sports awards were on the same night as
overlap.
with band and choir.
Yeah.
It's like we're divided in conference.
Yep.
Goes to what time. We noticed, and we get it, everybody's busy on certain days, but it seemed like more often than not, there was still something in the high school and middle school the same exact night.
Yeah. And what we try to do is, if we do know that we've got events, and we look at our calendars collectively, is try to think about where that time is. So even with the open house for the elementary and the middle school at the beginning of the year, we knew there wasn't another couple hours in the day to do an open house on the top of those two for parents who had kids either at the middle or at the elementary and at the high school. And we made our kind of decision to kind of put that off to another time. But they staggered theirs. And I think there was a little bit of a window of time, but even then, we're trying to honor not too late at night and the opportunity when people get off work to actually be able to attend as well. So
She puts it in our group calendar. It goes across all of our phones.
Yeah.
So it's in there, but it's only as good as our kids.
no, that's a good piece of feedback, and it's something I'm sure as a district we can make happen. Let's jump to that other question. The next question, we've got about 10 minutes. What information about our school would you like to be more accessible, or would you like to learn more about? FAFSA, scholarships. Yep. Days when colleges are coming in to provide information.
Yeah, that was like, there was one that was on social media. Yeah.
I
It
saw
was
that.
on the Booster Club. The Booster Club.
Jody posted it.
Jody shared.
She'll copy and paste it off.
But social media is only as good as if your feeds are shown,
Right.
because a lot of times I don't see a lot of the high schools.
Yeah.
I see booster posts. And if Jody doesn't put it, paste it that page, I don't see it.
I think that goes back to your point about making sure that we've got our platform synced so that we send, and obviously it's not possible to sync all platforms. I know I used to use Twitter extensively in my administrative career, and people got it hooked on that. If you wanted information about what was happening from me in school in terms of activities or things, that would be, you'd have to be a follower. You'd have to use that platform. I know Facebook and Instagram sync. So if I post something on one, it posts on the high school as well. But again, I think it's not about whether or not the platforms necessarily sync. It's about whether we send messages out in all of our possible platforms in a timely manner when we have important messages.
I would suggest, at least for your website, CHS website is and contain easy links to find the information you're looking for. Right now, you get on there and there's calendars. It's just like
We had that conversation with the webmaster just today, as a matter of fact. So to your point, like taking the time to vet
at a
that.
minimum, that's a place where somebody should be able to go and say, I'm looking for this.
Yeah.
and find it, and have it current.
I agree.
I was just gonna mention too, that is something that a student works on, and so they have an advisor, but we also are trying to give the student the grace that learning and process too. So if you see something that you're like, this doesn't make sense, give us a call, because I had an issue yesterday and it was fixed within a half hour. So, something's not right.
Yeah. But a lot of that's, to your point, a lot of that's summer work going into the school year.
I totally get it, but it's a resource that, I mean, I'm an old guy, so I look at a website, I don't have Facebook, I don't have Twitter. I don't have stuff. So I go to Cashmere High School website and I expect to find something. That's out. Yeah.
Well, I would say that the front page, usually we have prioritized information so that you don't actually even have to do any of the drop down menus. So if we've got something important, it's usually frontlined. Mr. Brown, do you want to say something?
Getting back to the question at hand, financial aid and scholarship. Be looking on that front page that Mr. McKenzie just mentioned, as well as we work to improve our communication process, because they're both a financial aid night and a scholarship night. Now, traditionally, I mean, this is cutting edge news. Just had a conversation with this fall. Dr. Mr. McKenzie might not even know about it yet. We're going to move our scholarship night, which has traditionally been the early part of January. We're going to move that to November because these scholarships have become earlier, been released earlier. We usually wait till January because we're kind of getting close to that end of that first semester, so we get the transcript and all that stuff. But we started talking today, and she ended with, I think we need to move it to November. Don't know, we don't have a date set yet, but we're talking about moving that whole scholarship night, which was asked about, to November. So it'll be on our webpage and whatever communication process we go through here at this.
And our second college planning night, which they go over FAFSA, is October 11th.
So it's now September 26th, October 11th, and sometime in November. Dr. works out really well. That's month.
So second college planning night, October 11th, focused on FAFSA, filling out that intensive financial aid form. And then we're looking at a scholarship night in November, moved from January because of the increase in number of scholarships and the time it takes to curate applications.
What she's talking about, senior night, that is college information.
Yeah, this Monday, coming Monday, college planning night.
There's colleges coming, I saw something in colleges.
Yeah.
Start next week.
Here.
Yeah.
My other question regarding your second bullet point there, do the kids have a list or access to like all the clubs and things that are available? And know when their first meeting and all that stuff is?
They do. So one of the things that we added to our freshman orientation, and then we asked students who were leaders in all of our clubs and organizations and sports for all seasons, was to promote out when there was going to be their first. That shows up in the bulletin when they're going to have those first meetings, when they start working on who their leadership is in the different organizations, elections in that process, setting goals for the year. But that worked for us, especially with our incoming freshmen, because it created an opportunity to say, let's start getting organized right essentially the day before school started. So that information will be in the bulletin as well.
Additionally, this year, as we see a couple years since COVID, but this year we've returned to a handbook test. And all that information is in the first 3 or 4 pages of the handbook. And when we give a handbook test, we actually ask just to see to make sure people are at least coming through and looking at that. That list is complete. And updated, we updated this year, I don't know, right as we started school, and updated all the information.
So Mr. Brown clarifying that in the handbook, which was reviewed in, I think it was the beginning of second period, or was the beginning of first period over the course of about a week and a half, that resulted in a handbook test during advisory last week. Students had the opportunity to review various pieces of information in the handbook, one of those being all the various clubs and organizations available.
Last year, you guys had a counselor that would come and students could make appointments with the counselor in the schools. They didn't have to go out like to confluence or whatever.
Yes.
Still implementing that as a plan, right?
We are. We have, and usually that designated day here at the high school is Tuesdays. That's when we have, because we have a relationship with Confluence, we bring in counseling support. And students can set appointments if they want to do counseling appointments. Usually they're anywhere from a half an hour, depending on the circumstances. He does a little bit of triage as well if we've got dysregulated students during the day. He unfortunately has been out ill since the beginning of the school year. And so we anticipate him coming back next month. So. Any other questions about information or that you want more accessible, or things that you'd like to learn more about? You guys are doing great. Okay, rate your confidence understanding on how to access information about your student grades. 1, I don't know how to access my student grade information at all on Skyward, or 5, I can do it whenever I need to. Any ones? Any ones?
I know that I can, but I don't.
Okay, it's not a confessional. I think what's important, more important than you being able to access your grades, is you taking the time to ask your student to show you how to access grades. And I think having that conversation with your student in our study strategies class every Friday, it's actually a graded assignment. They have to come up and do a homework check and show that they don't have any missing assignments in that class. And that's got some power. That's a lever going into the weekend. So you having those conversations with your student as well on whatever sequence you want to, they can very easily on their phones pull up that page that I ask my students to pull up on their devices or on their phones, and it'll show the grades they have in their classes. And on top of it, it'll say, I have X number of missing assignments. And you can look at what they are. It says, I have no missing assignments. And I think that's a light lift, and a conversation takes 2 minutes. I go through the 30 kids in my study strategies class and about 15 total. It's really just an accountability check. But in the end, if you feel like your student is struggling in some way, shape, or form, calling the student or talking to the student about having a conversation with their teacher about how that teacher can support them re-engaging is step number 1. If that conversation doesn't lead to any kind of meaningful results, you engaging in a conversation with that teacher. If that doesn't result in any meaningful results, you having a conversation with me or Mr. Brown about how we can support engaging your student, re-engaging your student. I mediate disconnect every single day. It's a big part of my job. Glad to do that. Question.
Most important things for me is actually getting from staff of teachers. It's teacher for students reached out and said, this is what you should expect. Here's the progress you made. This is what you're looking for. And it's nice because sometimes you're not.
And this, what you're referring to, which is teachers communicating clearly via Skyward messages about what you should expect to see your students doing, studying, what it is that they're learning, is really one of our prioritized commitments this year as a school community. We want to make transparent as possible the work that we're doing with your students. And we know that if we're not communicating to you units of study, standards that they're working towards proficiency or mastery in, deadlines, that it's hard for you to be that lever of support that you can absolutely be.
Yeah, Mr. Dwyer does a good job of that.
That's two big plugs for science.
I will tell you also, well, sorry, that if you log into Skyward and get on there, there's actually a calendar on there, and not all the teachers are officially using this yet. They're working that way. I know for a fact, Jed O'Brien on my daughter's Skyward account had 3 or 4 different assignments upcoming that were scheduled into that calendar, and I can see what, oh, somebody's got this, oh, somebody's got that. I like it.
Mr. Brown referenced that in Skyward, there is a calendar where many of our teachers pre-calendar upcoming events so that parents and students know that deadlines are approaching. Suggestions you have for how we can help you feel better connected to your students' school experience. I could talk to tech about the governor. The concern is that if you step away from Skyward for any serious amount of time, I don't, within seconds, it kicks you out. I can look into that. I have those same frustrations in a lot of platforms that I use as well. The only one I'm happy about is my bank. Yep.
Gina had requested the Skyward app. I didn't know that there was an app for that. I didn't know until, and I'm glad you guys told the freshmen, and then I often don't look as I go to the computer, but if I can.
Well, maybe I will add that to my parent newsletter in October with some instructions on how to log in. Well, it's 7:03.
So regardless of communication style, I always feel like you come to the school to whoever works in the school and talk to them and ask questions. So that's the best form of communication.
It is.
You can use all the social media, but I feel that you've created an environment in the school that you can go to the teacher or administrator.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks for saying that. The schools are the hub of this community. It's the reason why I'm here. There's no question about it. And we want everyone to feel like they can walk in the door and say, you guys are doing great at this, or walk in the door and say, I need you to be better. And like I said, we don't have a bulldog way that says growth mindset and not try to model that every single day. That's a top down, starts with me and Mr. Brown and goes through all of our faculty. So we're committed to growing our practice, improving service to your students. And I'm super grateful to all of you for being here tonight. And I know that our next meeting is going to be at least 150 parents here talking about the great things that are happening at school. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you.